before the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled is soprano Shana Blake Hill and artist Peter Lodato. Shana Blake Hill grew up in North Carolina. She earned a bachelor's degree from Oberlin Conservatory of Music in Ohio and a master's in vocal performance from USC's prestigious Thornton School of Music. It looks like you were always on the track to music, were you?
Pretty much. My parents, I think, decided very young that they wanted me to be in music. I got lots of musical instruments for my birthday.
Oh, you did?
Yes, I did. I think they were trying to make a hint, but
did you play them?
I did, actually. I played around with a lot of, kids things, ukuleles, rhythm instruments.
But you had the musical.
Yes, I always had a very good musical ear. My father always holds up to me that he sold his motorcycle to get me a piano.
Did you play the piano?
I played the piano mostly by ear. I never really came up to his standards as a pianist.
But the thing is, you had your own instrument.
I had
all the time.
That's right, baked in.
It was there. How did you start developing that?
I think early on I developed it with my imagination. I think a great ingredient of any opera singer is a wild imagination, and I certainly had that as a child. And I was an only child, so I grew up playing by myself quite a lot, and one of my favorite toys was my record player.
And did you sing to it?
I did. I sang to my record player. I had wonderful recordings of, Julie Andrews and My Fair Lady and Sound of Music and, all of the great musicals. And then my parents also had recordings of The Magic Flute, Mozart's The Magic Flute, and Hansel and Gretel, and a number of operas. So,
which way were you going at that point? Probably musical comedy.
Musical theater, I think, was really, musical comedy was probably my first love. And theater in general, I think I was always a theatrical child, and it always appealed to me, theater. I actually did my first theatrical role in 8th grade. I did Rosalind in As You Like It, and Shakespeare's As You Like It.
Oh, so you were already ready for that. You were doing your acting bit.
I was, and
but
I had
when did
such
you
a marvelous
start
time.
music lessons, voice lessons?
I didn't start voice lessons until much later. Most people don't know that opera singers, or singers in general, the voice develops pretty late. And so it's, it's a pretty childish and light voice that's hard to mold until about 16 or 18.
Oh, so it's better to wait?
It's better to wait,
Oh, that's interesting.
For most voices, it's better to wait. And, until the voice settles a little bit, and so you can start building the muscles.
Oh, that's interesting. But what was the difference then between the conservatory and the Thornton Music School?
Well, they're both conservatories. I think that the difference between Oberlin and USC was really that Oberlin is a very closed world. It's a very closed system. It's a small town outside of Cleveland. It's a very prestigious music school with enormous and phenomenal facilities and incredible library and, tradition, et cetera, but it's very contained within itself. USC, on the other hand, is open to the city, and so I was able to make the jump from USC to the Young Artist Program at Los Angeles Opera.
That's what I was going to ask you about. So that, you were training at USC?
Yes, I was training.
And then you were accepted to the LA Opera?
Exactly.
Is that the idea? Do you
Exactly.
audition? And
Yes, it was a long audition process, and it's not just an audition process as you would think of, just sort of standing up and singing for people auditioning you. It's also an audition process as that they try you out in a number of venues, small people's homes, outreach programs.
before you're a member?
Absolutely, yeah. They want to know that they can count on you, that you're a good colleague, that you're a good musician, that you work well under pressure, et cetera, et cetera.
How many people do they take?
It varies from season to season because really the function of a young artist is to fill in the gaps of the major casting, and so it depends on how many compromario roles they need to cover, or how many covers that they need. It's
just
varies
different
from season to season.
And then how long do you stay with them?
That also varies. So each singer has its own, has his or her own sort of time period that they need to be there. That there are voices that are nearly ready to hit the professional scene, and there are voices that need a little more nurturing. I was sort of in and out of the program. I was not officially a resident artist until the final season that I was there, but I was there for 3 seasons. So.
Is this a stepping stone then into?
Oh, most certainly.
It is.
Most
Do most
certainly.
people do it?
Yes, it's desirable for a young opera singer to do an undergraduate and a master's program, and then to do some kind of apprenticeship program with a company.
So we've got you to opera.
That's
You've
right.
toured Europe. You've toured Europe.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I've toured Europe, but I've certainly sung in Europe. If touring means
That was
one or
touring
two
to me.
places. Sorry, touring.
Getting there and singing is the tour. So that was great. And you have sung The Magic Flute.
Correct. Several
and
times.
Don Giovanni.
Correct. Several times, yes.
La Boheme.
Yes, many times. I'm on my 7th La Boheme.
Does a conductor make a difference when you're doing
Every
those
time,
roles?
absolutely. Every conductor brings a new character to
And then what
the
happens
piece.
to you? Do you follow what the conductor? You have to follow the conductor, right?
Well, yes, we have to follow the conductor, but the conductor, if there were a conductor here, he would probably say that that varies from singer to singer. I think in the end it's a collaboration, The conductor is there with a concept, and it's his job to show you what his concept is and to get you excited about his concept, and then it's your job to help him realize his concept.
But you say you're on your 7th La Boheme.
I am.
Okay, 7 conductors or the same conductors?
No, 7 different conductors.
Well,
Very different.
does your
conductors.
voice vary? Does your
Absolutely.
acting vary? It does? All
Absolutely.
of that varies?
Absolutely. With each performance, I find, and also I've done 2 different roles now. I'm now doing Musetta. I started out doing Mimi, who was the tragic heroine, and I'm now doing the sort of comic, sexy heroine, Musetta. And she is much more of a fireball, much more of a sort of Carmen kind of character. And so the roles have been changing for me, but also vocally I change as I grow.
So the conductor has something to do with the way you act.
Most certainly.
But you've taken acting lessons also
Oh, yes, quite a
along
bit.
with, I didn't even know that they gave opera singers acting lessons.
Well, sometimes they don't. But the programs in America certainly have come to include more and more acting instruction along the way. I think that most, especially also in young artist programs, I believe that they're also trying to emphasize more and more acting.
I know that's a very Russian tradition.
Yes.
Because they always teach the
Yes.
acting and the pantomime and
All of us
the,
should look up to the Russian singers. They are all wonderfully accomplished singers.
But where would you find someone to teach you to act on stage? Or
Well-
do you learn to act as an actress for a play?
It's sort of like that. I mean, I've done a lot of straight theater as well, and so, but it's a very different technique because you have to be able to hold your body in such a place as to get a perfect sound out.
That's the other thing you
And
have
so
to
you
worry
sort of
about.
have to layer a character over your singing technique physically, and that becomes a challenge, certainly, as especially as you have directors who have more and more challenging things these days for opera singers to do.
Well, and that takes us to the contemporary opera,
Oh,
which you
yes.
just finished.
My
and
great
which,
love.
Which was, you just did something, Sarah's Diary with Glenn.
Glenn Paxton,
Paxton.
yes, he's a wonderful composer, certainly contemporary. He's living and has in fact been on your show, and he's a phenomenal interpreter of dramatic material, especially current dramatic material.
Well, it was dramatic, and it is current. It was Sarah's Diary. It was a story of 9/11,
Correct.
of women involved in 9/11.
Correct.
How did you do research for that?
Well, it's a composite of a number of women who were pregnant at the time of the disaster and who delivered their babies shortly thereafter. There was a wonderful piece they did on Good Morning America with, I think there were, 20s and 30s of them sitting around with their babies in their arms. It was just this incredible sense of new life being born out of this tragedy, and to be in a position of such joy, you know, and expectancy, and then to have this happen and to lose their husbands. And so in researching it, I think I did more of just trying to contact in myself the real places in which I would have understood being in that position.
So Glenn Paxton wrote the music to that, and then
Correct.
Leroy Aarons
Was the librettist.
wrote
which
the
was
words. So
yes.
he was the inspired one, and then he brought the composer in.
I think, yes, that's how it went. I think he began with the prose poem, and which he was inspired to write after 9/11, and then he had worked with Glenn Paxton once before on Monticello.
Oh, were you in Monticello?
I was, which was my first meeting with the both of them. I was privileged enough to interpret Sally Hemings, who was another phenomenal woman character, the slave mistress of Thomas Jefferson.
So that's how they knew you.
Absolutely.
Do you think they wrote this with you in mind?
They did.
They did.
I mean, this is what they tell me. You know, I have to believe what they tell me. But I think initially, of course, it was the pure inspiration on Roy Aaron's part, and then he had gone to Vicky Kirsch, who is the pianist in the piece, and said, what can we do with this? And they had thought even it was a dramatic reading possibility for me. But then they once again thought of Glenn and collaborated with Glenn, and we come out with this wonderful new genre, which is the dramatic monologue incorporating an operatic voice.
And that,
so it's
that was Monticello, which was performed.
That Monticello was performed initially on the Selected Shorts series on KCRW.
And then let's go back to Sarah's Diary.
And Sarah's
right,
Diary was, Monticello also was performed at California Plaza. And then Sarah's Diary has just been premiered at the LA County Museum of Art's Sundays at 6 live program, which is broadcast on K Mozart.
So you were in full regalia.
Oh, yes.
And you had an audience.
Absolutely.
And it was also on the air.
Yes.
Yes. I see.
Which is also a challenge to be on live radio as well as performing for a live audience.
What is your dream? Do you want to be in films?
You know, I've never really explored film as an option. I think it's extraordinarily exciting. I don't have much experience in that area. Of course, I would welcome, you know, any experience like that. I think most of all, my love is the stage, and if I had my ultimate dream, it would be really a double career, both in straight theater and in opera, which I love, and in these pieces that incorporate both. Because
now that things are so contemporary, I think we're going to see different kinds of mixtures.
The
don't
merging
you?
of the media, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's very exciting what's happening
Before
now.
we leave, you brought me a couple of photographs
Sure.
just of your roles. Let's.
Yes. This is Titania in A Midsummer Night's Dream by Benjamin Britten. This was a wonderful production we did at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles.
And then here you are.
That's
again.
right.
And then let me just show this.
These are my Mimis. This was my Mimi. This is backstage, waiting to go on for the final scene of Mimi and La Boheme at Los Angeles Opera.
She dies, right?
She does.
She looks pretty sad there.
Yeah, when
And
they
then
cough
this
in the
is
first act, they
the
die in the
other?
last. This is the other Mimi, which I did at Durham Triangle Opera in Durham, North Carolina.
Ah.
Yes.
So you've been all over the U.S.
Yes.
Oh, well,
she was a
gonna-
1920s flapper Mimi.
Oh, she was so totally different
I know,
again.
so different.
I'm so glad you came with us
Oh,
today.
it's wonderful to be here. Thank you,
Shana
Joan.
Blake Hill.
Yes.
And don't go away, because we'll be back with artist Peter Lodato, who did the paintings on our set today. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back. I'm here with artist Peter Lodato, who is a native Angelino. He has a Bachelor of Arts from Cal State Northridge. He's earned a National Endowment of the Arts grant. In fact, he earned it 2 times. He was bestowed with that grant. He's taught at Art Center, Otis Art Institute, California Institute of the Arts, and the University of California, Irvine, and has had one-man exhibits and shows in museums all across the U.S. Is your work known as architectural?
Some people think of it in that context. I think of it as related to light and space. So it's about physical space.
So what about color? Does that play a part with the light?
Huge part, yeah.
And how do you choose colors?
A lot of it's from intuition, thinking about how I want to feel or how I want a piece to project itself into the world, the kind of emotional key it has, and then I go for trying to find the color that'll fit the emotional aspect of the piece.
Do you use canvas all the time?
I used to paint directly on walls of rooms.
I think I have a picture of
yeah.
it, don't I?
Uh-huh. And
so it would be something like this where the studio or the gallery would be, you just go in and paint right on the wall?
Right, yeah.
What is the difference from that than putting a canvas in these places?
Largely the scale, and the room itself becomes a part of the piece. In a way, the room is like, in the early pieces when I do an installation in a room, it was like being inside of a painting. Like actually being in a painting.
I see. So and you're surrounded?
Mm-hmm.
But couldn't you be surrounded by canvas as well? Canvas pieces?
Yes, but it's different.
Why is it?
Because one's frontal and the other is that there's things all around you. So you can actually, I used to think about feeling things that were behind me or to the side of me.
So if you paint on the walls, they're behind you and they're on the side of you?
Right, be a whole room. And so rooms were sort of the, how do you say, the, like the canvas for my artwork. What do you call it? Structure for the artwork. And then as years went on, I started making paintings of ideas for rooms, and the physical aspect of painting became more and more interesting. And so I let go of, you know, I painted studies of actual installations, and I let go of that to make paintings that just stand up for themselves.
So you would paint a canvas and then have the work that you put in that room painted on the canvas in different areas of the canvas, so that it looked like a room, the canvas.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't realize what that was.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was depicting the room.
Right, and I used to think of early Italian Renaissance paintings, you know, because there's an architectural thing in all those paintings that has, you know, perspective and stuff like that. So it was a way that I could participate in that genre, which is old.
But you're not a one-color painter.
No.
You wouldn't call yourself that monochrome.
No, no.
But is your work in the style of, say, Kelly or Marden or Marioni?
I don't think so.
Not at all.
I think it's more in the context of maybe Barnett Newman. If American painting for sure, of the 40s and 50s, and I don't think of it as being monochromatic like Kelly or people like that. I think of it more as spatial. You know?
But Kelly does colors in his work, and also relates to space and does shapes like that. But that's a totally different school, would you think? Say?
Yeah, I think so. I think that well, my work is more about the object than Kelly's work.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
And
actual
so
painting.
this, say something like this, is this about the object?
I would think that this is about the painted surface more than, say, Kelly doesn't have a painted surface.
No,
he
but
doesn't
just
want
for
that
you.
to happen.
But for you, for your work, to explain your work, it's more about the object there.
I don't know. It's kind of this piece, actually, in this piece, what they share in common is that there's the image of a door. And
and
this is an abstraction of a door, which is probably pretty abstract. But so there's symbolism in the work that doesn't exist in, say, those other monochromatic paintings.
I see what you're saying. I see. It's just approached from a different point of view. So some people, a lot of the reviews that I read was that your work is so spiritual. And your response to that was?
What was my response? Well, I excel to the spiritual, I guess. That's just what I'm making up right now. But Work that has been motivated throughout history on a spiritual level is something that's always interested me.
But the point is, everyone who's looked at these in my presence have said, "Oh, these are so soothing," or "Oh, these are so beautiful. They make me feel so calm." And I see that there's a spirituality about them that is just innate, I guess.
Well, I like that.
That's what happens, right?
I like people to have a spiritual experience when they see my work.
Well, talking about painting on the walls.
Yeah.
What happens to that work? That work is...
Well, I don't do it anymore, but the work is it's transient. When after the act and the show's over, it goes away.
I know, but you don't have anything except the documentation.
Right, and that initially wasn't a difficulty because my motive of making the work was for the experience of making the work. It was in a way a selfish thing to have this experience for my own development. And as time went on and a lot of good pieces went away, I got tired of that and I didn't want them to go away.
Well, people want to buy things too, and you can't go to a gallery and say, "Can you cut this wall out?"
Well, you could do that.
You could?
Sure. You know, people like Solowit or
They paint on walls
a lot
too.
of people have done installations that can either be regenerated or...
Yes.
It really has to do with the how ambitious the person who was going to buy the work. You know, like, I mean, there's Bruce Nauman installations all over Europe that are not transient because somebody else has taken the responsibility to carry this on. You know,
And put it and leave it there,
and
or
take
to
the charge
redo
of
it.
art. That it's a big responsibility.
Right, right. I'm going to show a couple of these things because a couple of these paintings.
Okay.
They're current, I
Yes,
presume, and they're this
Yeah, this one painting is 8 foot tall. I think it's 96 by 42 inches.
And the relationship of color.
Well, the relationship is really about figure ground. At the bottom of the canvas, the blue appears to be on top of the white, and the white is, and at the top of the canvas, the white appears to be on the blue. Now, the white's not really white. It's got a lot of different colors in it, and shimmers, and it glows.
So it's just not the 2 stripes that you've painted. There are 3 stripes that you've painted there.
I don't even think of them as stripes. I think of them as edges that glow, glowing edges.
So, and then
And this is
this
a study
one, this
for,
way?
turn it upside down. There
right
you go.
this way.
In the last 3 years, I've been doing paintings that are either like the image, the black image, to me is like a door, and then the other image is divisions of these colors. And this is a large drawing which embodies both of aspects of the recent work, say the last 5 years.
The door goes back to that architectural feeling that I always thought about when you were doing work, and also when you painted a piece that depicted the interior of a gallery. Those always look like doors.
Yeah. Well, for me, I used to make these large flat paintings, you know, 10-foot square or 11 by 8 foot that were painted right on the wall. And I thought of them as like voids of color that you'd get lost in the interior of the rectangle. And then when you physically see the edge of it, it would create an after image. And so it
like
would,
a shadow?
Well, like a glow that exists inside your body.
Oh, I see.
And so the perceptual aspect of you know, how one looks at something became kind of like the subject matter of the work or the experience.
Here's one more.
Yeah, this one.
And this has a yellow stripe on the bottom?
Yeah, it has, and then the red is complicated. It's underpainted with green, and it feels like almost like a red cloud that's being held in by these colors. And this relates to the installation that you saw. Actually, I started making these paintings in looking back on the earlier work that were, you know, installed
Like
directly
that.
in galleries. Yeah.
Well, when you talk about the red has so many layers of different colors, I know Jim Hayward, who was in this show called Drunken Masters with you, which was at Gallery C
Right.
in Hermosa Beach, does monochromatic paintings, but with hundreds of different colors underneath them.
Yeah, mine have a lot of different colors also, but his paintings are, I think he's more concerned with the physical surface of the painting, and mine
Where are
is...
you?
Where am I here?
Are you right in the middle?
I'm the guy there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this show
Yeah.
of really accomplished painters, Roger Herman, Jim Hayward, Peter Lodato, who's the other one?
Hubert Schmalik is myself.
Are in, is it Gallery C
Right.
in Hermosa Beach, which was an old movie theater.
Bijou Theater. It was, the space was obtained by Michael and Neil Paliao and Jason Moskowitz. I remember that because of Robert Moskowitz. famous
Oh yeah,
painter.
the painter, yes.
And they wanted to contribute something to the community. So they got this landmark building, and they hired a German design company to design the interiors. These are award-winning people, and it's their way of making a contribution to the community.
Well, how does your work look there? How
Beautiful.
did your work look there?
Fabulous.
How does it look there?
It looks really
Is it
good.
painted on the wall, or
No,
are
no,
they
no.
separate?
It's all oil on. It's oil on canvases for the most part, and then it's the four of us whose work. Jimmy's a non-objective painter like I am, and then Hubert and Roger are both, figuration is part of the work. So everybody's work is very different, and it's all, it's not like you see Peter's place and Jimmy's place or
I
whatever.
see,
It's all
they're
interhung, yeah.
Oh, that's great.
And
But you also had, and we're running out of time, but you had a big show at Fred Weissman's
Right.
gallery in Pepperdine,
Right.
and you used a lot of different things there. You didn't just use canvas and paint.
well, that was 20 years of work. So
Did you have sculpture?
I had sculptures there, and
Yeah.
I had there's an image of the sculptures in there.
In
I
this?
had no, here it's in
Oh.
that stack of. There's
I didn't
beautiful.
see
You got to show
one.
it.
I didn't see it. I think we left it in the
Did I leave it
envelope.
in the other room? Okay,
yeah,
that's okay.
we left it in the envelope.
Anyway, so that show is called From Installation to Painting, and what it was is 20 years of work. That was a representation of the transitions, various transitions of the work over 20 years.
Well, we're going to just show this because this is what we were talking about at Gallery C. It's all four of the painters, and we're going to thank you. Thanks, Peter Lodato,
welcome.
for coming on. And thank you for watching the Joan Quinn Profiles. Keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles, 90017.